So, hello and welcome to the Sports News Blitz podcast. And we're back. We've got Sam after Christmas. Sam, how was your Christmas, my friend?
It's nice to be back. Still a bit hungover and feeling a bit full, but it's nice to be back, of course.
And today we've got another very brilliant guest for you in Dougie Critchley. So, thank you very much for joining us. How was your Christmas, Dougie?
It was nice, thanks. Yeah, it's quite a mental couple of days in the Critchley household. So my brother and sister are twins. They're born on Christmas Eve, and then it's obviously Christmas Day, then Boxing Day, and then it was my mum's 60th on the 27th. So it was a lot of fun, similarly to Sam, like overate, overdrank, but had a lovely time. So it was very nice indeed. How are you doing, Matthew?
I'm very well, thank you. Well, if Christmas isn't for overindulgence on the nice things, I don't know what it's for in the first place. So to start with, what we like to do, Dougie, is kind of ask our guests a bit of a random question, but also it kind of gets a feel for you personally a little bit. So in terms of when you've been to stadiums and you've been to grounds, whether this be football, whether it be tennis, whether it be hockey, wherever you've been, I'd like to know where you found the best food, whether that's in the media department, like in terms of the food they've put on for the media, or if you've gone as a fan.
That's a great question. As a fan, I wouldn't describe myself as a non-foodie, but I'm pretty unbothered about standard of food. I will pretty much get anything down me. So I love chips and gravy outside the Stadium of Light, massively excited to watch another Sunderland game. That is probably my sort of mecca of foods, as it were. But in terms of the best standard I've ever had, I was lucky enough to go to Spurs this season to work behind the scenes, doing Sky Sports' like social media. And Spurs' food, their buffet that they put on, is honestly insane. Like there's like 4 or 5 different roast options. Then there was like cauliflower cheese, which they're quite stingy with. I think they knew it was the real dish that everyone wanted. And then like an insane cheese board as well. Yeah, Spurs was a real slick experience, to be fair. They have kind of nailed both the fan and media experience there.
Oh, wow. I don't think we've... So you'll have to back me up on this. I don't think we've had Spurs yet, no.
No, not at all. Only Chelsea and a few others. That was the one I remember, was always Chelsea and Man City as well.
Yeah, it's always the big dogs. As I imagine they could probably afford to put on a better spread. We have had York City, though, which was quite a rogue one.
Nice. Love that.
Yeah, we've got to respect it. So kind of delving into the questions to start with, Dougie, you actually run your own podcast called The Truth. I wondered if you could just talk to us about that for a little while. What's it about? What does it entail? Who do you do it with?
Yeah, so I do it with a journalist called Sam Tighe, who I used to work with quite extensively when Football Daily existed, and he'd often come on our shows and vice versa. I'd go on his podcast, which was called Ranks FC. Well, actually, it was part of Bleacher Report initially, and he does it with a friend of his called Jack Collins, who I went to uni with. He was in the year above me, so I knew him a little bit at uni. But we've both ended up working in a similar sort of space. And Sam approached me at the start of the season and said he had this idea for a podcast called The Truth. And the idea is that, I don't know, in 2025, 2024, the era we're living in, I feel like there's more and more extreme takes on social media. Players are called rubbish. Players are called the best in the world after, making a mistake or scoring an excellent goal. So the idea was to take the polarizing topics that really divide people and try and find the truth in it. It is, I think it's an okay name, to be honest. It A, sounds a little bit arrogant, and B, sounds a little bit like a conspiracy theory podcast. So we are slightly treading a difficult line there. But yeah, we're about 20 episodes in now. And yeah, it's part of the Ranks FC podcast sort of series, as it were. They release, I think, 3 podcasts it is a week, and we're one of them. And the latest podcast is about Kavisha Kvaratskhelia move to PSG, which went through this week. So yeah, go check that out if you want to.
Definitely. Well, obviously we have our own podcast here as well. I just want to ask, what's your best advice for to get a podcast to grow, to keep it maintaining an audience and everything, because that is obviously the most difficult part of it all.
Yeah, I think consistency is the big thing. Make sure that you are communicating with the audience you do have. Make sure you are regular about when you upload, and yeah, just keep at it really, because if you're enjoying making the content that you are making, whether that's a podcast, whether you're writing a blog, vlogging, writing match reports, etc. If you're enjoying it, then the chances are that the reader or the listener is going to enjoy listening to it. So yeah, try and find as much fun as you can while doing it. If you're not enjoying whatever route you've gone down, mix it up, try new things, try and improve podcast to podcast, one small thing, and 100 podcasts in, you'll be a much better podcaster. So I think it's just about regularity and basically enjoyment. And then, you know, clip it up as well. Social media is such a huge platform now for podcast growth. I think the days of just growing organically just by releasing audio every week are kind of done. I think you do need a couple of clips, hopefully on Instagram, Twitter, or X, you know, TikTok, etc. Try and grow through that as well.
Also, can I just ask quickly? So I used to watch Football Daily all the time when I was younger. Guilty. But I just want to ask, obviously that was a massive platform, but now everyone's kind of moved on to doing their own thing, and like people on Sky Sports, everything, and I find it very surreal. I can only imagine what that's like for you. Can I just ask, what was the journey like working at Sky Sport, working at Football Daily, and now everyone doing their own thing? What's that been like?
Yeah, it was amazing. So I've been working. So Sky bought Football Daily in 2016. I started working at Football Daily in September 2017 after doing a master's in broadcast journalism at City University, which gave you basically like a grounding in producing and presenting for radio and TV, and also sent you out every week and you had to find a news story in North London. It was a really good grounding in news. And on the back of that, applied for so many different jobs and was lucky enough to get this job at a YouTube channel, which I didn't really watch a lot of YouTube back then, to be totally honest. But, you know, from discovering it, you know, in my application phase, I was like, this is such a cool place. This would be epic to work in, and was lucky enough to get the job there. And it just been taken over by Sky, so it had more budget to hire more people. And it was already really successful. But over the next sort of 7-8 years, we grew it really successfully. And yeah, it was a great place to work. There was about 15 of us, about 9 presenters, a few editors, camera operators, but you kind of got experience doing a little bit of everything. There was a lot of different personalities, a lot of different characters, but I do genuinely think it was like a real good school in sort of social media and broadcast practice. Like some of the people that have worked there have gone on to great things, not even just the current generation, but the previous generation. You know, there was Marcus Speller, who was part of the start of Football Daily. He now presents the Football Ramble podcast. There was Lawrence McKenna, who went on to work with True Geordie and now kind of does his own thing. And then Roman Kemp as well used to work for Football Daily in the original times. He now presents on Capital. And then came sort of our generation, the Joe, Chris, Pat, and then slightly later, Zach, myself, Mikey McCubbin, Sam Albasecki, etc. And yeah, it was absolutely brilliant to work for. Absolutely loved it. Sky wanted to go in a slightly different direction, and there was a few changes behind the scenes. Some people decided that they wanted to go do their own thing. And so, yeah, Zach's gone and set up his own channel, which Patrick Van Straten and Henry Hill feature on. And yeah, people have gone in different directions. A few of us have stayed at Sky, and we now create content for Sky Sports Premier League. So it was a real good grounding and yeah, an amazing place to work. And it's nice because we're still really good friends.
Well, it's nice to hear that you all still are good friends. You all keep in touch still. I want to just touch back on something you said in that answer, was that you did a master's in broadcast journalism. Now I'm about to graduate doing my undergrad in broadcast journalism up at Leeds Trinity. Do you think that a master's degree still has the sort of the weighting it had when you graduated?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I mean, you can only really answer that from my perspective. I think getting some sort of qualification, some sort of NCTJ is really important for some employers, but it's not important for everyone. When I started at Football Daily, it wasn't like absolutely imperative that I had it, but I was lucky enough to get in through the door without it. Some employers make it a requirement. I would say to anyone listening to this who, you know, I was in a lucky financial position where my parents could help me out with the fees to do that. It is expensive to do one. And there's so much you can learn on YouTube. There's so many amazing tutorials on how to edit on Premiere Pro and how to set up cameras, etc. It is a worthwhile thing to do for sure, but do not worry if you can't afford to do it, because you can self-teach yourself so many of these things. Like some of the best people at Photoshop I know at Sky have completely taught themselves. So there's really no limit to what you can achieve just by, pushing yourself and trying to learn for the best of your own ability.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the question I always like to know as well about when I meet people who are in the industry and like done like amazing things like you have in the sports industry. I just want to know, did you always know you wanted to be a commentator and like discuss football and talk about football on like a platform like this, or like how did that come about? Because I always find it so interesting finding it out from different people.
Yeah, so mine was quite interesting in that I didn't study anything to do with sport. I went to Durham as my undergraduate degree and was doing international relations, but it got to my third year and everyone was applying on these grad schemes, a lot of them quite financial related, I don't know, law, insurance. And I just knew that that's just not what I wanted to do. And I kind of had a bit of a light bulb moment in that I'd done a bit of student radio, I'd done a bit of sort of event hosting. I'd always really enjoyed public speaking. And I was obsessed with sports. So I was like, I really want to try and become a sports broadcaster. Obviously quite ambitious, and left university, didn't really know what I was doing, worked unpaid at a number of different places, was kind of thinking, God, this is not what I had in mind. So at that stage, I then contacted a lot of journalists that I really rated in the industry. A few of them were really kind enough to get back to me, like Mark Pugach, who presents ITV football. Mark Chapman met me for a coffee. Dan Rohn, who edits for BBC, he's like the lead presenter for BBC Sport. He did a phone call with me. So did this guy called Oliver Kay, who used to write for The Times, now is the chief football writer for The Athletic. And he recommended that I did this course at City University, this broadcast journalism course. So I applied for that or got in contact with them. They said they were full up. This was on the Wednesday. And then I was like, oh, I've missed it for another year. That's a real nightmare. Anyway, that weekend I was playing golf and I got an email from that course and they said someone's dropped out. If you can do an application in the next few hours, we'll basically accept you. And that was on a Saturday afternoon, got accepted that later that night. And I started on the Monday. So it was like a complete luck that I managed to get on that course. And as a real twist of fate, then, did 9 months of that, got a qualification in that. And then on the back of that, you've again got to restart applying for jobs. As I said before, was applying for like 30, 40 different roles. Some of them I was completely unqualified for, working unpaid once again, which is hopefully less of a thing now than when it was in 2017. But sadly, if you want to break into the industry, getting your foot in the door is the hardest thing. But you do have to be prepared to do a bit of unpaid work. And it's quite a challenging period, definitely. But I think if you start creating your own content, because so many people are passionate about sport, but what really stands you out is saying that this is the body of work that I've made. This is the podcast that I've made. These are the match reports I've written. Basically, if you want to become a writer, there's no excuse to not start writing about football right now. And it's so easy to go into an interview and be like, I love football and I love sport. Everyone loves sport, or a lot of people do anyway, particularly if they want to get into that industry. So showing them that you're not just passionate, you are experienced, no matter how embarrassing it is. Like when I started at Football Daily, I had a vlog on Facebook that was watched by, 50 people. Most of them were like my mum and her friends. And yeah, on the back of that, just having something to show people and having, a Twitter account, you could show them that you've grown this amount. And whenever you apply for these places, make sure that in your CV and in your cover letter, you make it clear that you started this blog and it's been read by this amount of people, or I've increased listenership on my podcast by this amount. Basically try and show as many results as possible in your application, because numbers stick in people's minds way more than I really like football and I've been an Arsenal fan since the days of Arsene Wenger and the Invincibles or whatever. So try and show as many results as possible in your application.
Oh, that's really good advice. That's something I don't think we've heard before either, which is brilliant. This is one of the favorite things I love about this podcast, is because we get like experienced professionals in who work in the media, and pretty much every single time we get a new nugget of advice, and that's just brilliant. Thank you very much. Kind of flicking back over to the football side of things, the sports side of things. To me, it seems like you focus quite a lot on football, like internationally, football abroad. I wondered, what is your favourite league or favourite team to sort of follow outside of the English Football League?
Amazing. I was lucky enough. So when I started at Football Daily, within a sort of year or so, I was basically put in charge of Euro Football Daily. So that gave me a lot more scope to really get stuck into the rest of Europe's top 5 leagues and try and look a bit further afield. I'd always been really passionate about the Champions League ever since I was a boy. I think because my club, Sunderland, were never really going to make it. It always felt like it had this amazing mystique about it. And Yeah, I always loved that. But in terms of my current favourite league outside of the Premier League and Championship, sadly where Sunderland reside, I would go with Serie A. I think Serie A has been amazing to watch in the last few years. Different winners pretty much every year. Milan, Napoli, Inter, Juventus's demise, they're slightly back on the rise. And I think it is the most competitive league as well. I think if you look around Europe's top 5 leagues, up until the last few weeks where Lazio and Fiorentina have dropped off, it felt like a sort of 6-way title race for a little bit up until about 6 weeks ago. So it's definitely a league with really, really fervent, passionate fans. There is almost always some sort of owner situation going off the pitch, some financial skullduggeries going on, all sorts of accusations. I mean, even this week, like the Lazio Eagle handler having to step down because he'd posted photos of his enlarged penis. Like that, this just doesn't happen. Like this, it feels like it's done by a scriptwriter. But yet that is Serie A on a weekly basis. There is just always something going on. So whilst I love the style of play in the Bundesliga, and I think it's epic, the fan culture there, I think Serie A is the one that in recent years has really gripped my attention most.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like a mad... I mean, I'm only an outside viewer because I don't really keep up to date, but I see little snippets of it. Like I saw a video of Kvice Kvaratskhelia, however you pronounce the name, going and like visiting the Maradona mural at 3 a.m. in the morning. And I mean, there just does seem to be some crazy connection between the players and the fans and the football there. But I was going to say, you mentioned the Champions League there. Pretty basic question, but I always find it interesting what people think. Who do you think is going to win the Champions League this year? Because it seems like quite a toss-up, I think, more so than the last few years anyway.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think the outstanding side in the competition so far has obviously been Liverpool, but I really struggle to imagine them in their first year under Slot winning the Premier League and Champions League in the same year. It just doesn't feel like it's going to be possible. Barcelona have been really poor before Christmas. Then I had an amazing Super Cup, absolutely demolished Real Madrid. That was a huge statement. I've got a sneaky feeling about Bayern Munich, though. I think that attacking depth is just insane. You know, the fact that, well, Matthias Tell might leave. Maybe they bring in Nkunku, but you can swap Kane out for Tell. You can swap out Elise, Sane, Gnabry, Coman, Musiala, Muller. I mean, that is just absolutely frightening attacking depth. And it does feel like squads this year that have the best depth with the amount of games they've been playing on the back of the Euros and Copa America in the summer. It feels like squads with the most depth are really thriving at the moment. I think it's partly the reason why Arsenal are really struggling this season. I think it's partly the reason why Liverpool, with all those forward options and Jota's missed large stretches of the season as well, are doing so well. So I feel like Bayern are slightly going under the radar as a real contender in this year's Champions League. I wouldn't call them an underdog because they're Bayern Munich, but yeah, that's my bet.
I was going to say, I think in the Champions League, unless it's a really outside shout, it's hard to call anybody an underdog, I think.
Sure.
Looking at it's sort of a common saying is that the Premier League's the best league in the world. Obviously, you enjoy the Premier League, you enjoy the Championship, but with your scope into the other like major leagues of the world, would you say that is, in your opinion, correct?
Yeah, I think it probably is at the moment. I don't think it's always been the case. I think the Premier League has a sort of inbuilt arrogance about it, and the way we talk about the Premier League. Clearly, in the early, from about 2011, 12, the sort of demise of Man United to 2016, 17, 18, and sort of Pep Guardiola's Man City really hitting their straps. The best league in the world was La Liga, comfortably, with Messi and Ronaldo at their peak, with those two ridiculous sides. And yet people would still be like, oh, well, the Premier League's the best in the world. It really wasn't at that time. Whereas now it does genuinely feel like, with the financial disparity between leagues and the standard of managers that have come to the Premier League in recent years as well, like the fact Unai Emery is Aston Villa manager, and no disrespect to Aston Villa, they're a big club historically, but you know, a 4-time Europa League winner and former PSG manager is at Aston Villa. I think it just does speak volumes about the standard of coaching in this league. It hasn't always translated to Champions League and European success. Like Villa last year were the only side to reach the semi-finals of any European competition. But I think you look at the Champions League finals of recent seasons from 2018 onwards, with an all-English final in 2019 and 2021. There's basically been an English representative in every year except for last year with Dortmund and Real Madrid, and what was it, 2020 with Bayern and PSG. Aside from that, there's been an English representative in every one, which I think does speak to the fact that English sides have done, you know, really, really well in that competition. It does speak volumes to the strength of the Premier League. It'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, obviously Man City are going through a really difficult patch at the moment. Not quite sure what's going to happen with their court case. I mean, they've just extended Erling Haaland for 9.5 years, which is crazy story. But yeah, we'll see whether that continues with Pep Guardiola's Man City struggling a bit. Jurgen Klopp was always very good in European competition with Liverpool as well. So we'll see what happens there. But for now, I think the Premier League is definitely the strongest.
It is crazy. The amount of quality throughout the league is insane. I think looking at like how tight it is in from like 10th, 11th to first, well to like 4th is insane. I was gonna say, do you have a favourite team to watch this year, maybe outside of the top 6-ish? Like that you enjoy watching?
Yeah, I think Bournemouth have been absolutely thrilling. Really entertaining. I think they have slightly overachieved, maybe, given the standard of player they've got. But look, I mean, I think the likes of Semenyo, the likes of Dean Huijsen at the back, Senesi and Zabani was such a nice partnership last year, and Huijsen's just easily slotted in there. I think that's an excellent addition. I think Fulham have been really impressive. I've been banging the drum for Anthony Robinson for a long time, but I do think he's not only the best left back in the Premier League this year, I think he's probably been the best left back in Europe. I mean, Nuno Mendes has a good claim at PSG, but Theo Hernandez hasn't really been at it. Andy Robertson's fall off has been really dramatic. So Fulham have been fantastic, and he's offering so much going forward. I think he's been the outstanding defender in terms of defensive actions in the entirety of Europe as well. So he's been brilliant. Yeah, so I go with Fulham and Bournemouth. I think they deserve the most props. And Nottingham Forest, I mean, amazing results, but I don't have as much love for the way they play.
When you said be there, I thought you were going to say Brighton for a second there. I'm a Brighton fan, but I made me quite happy, but maybe not based off our current form. So,
well, win last night.
It was all right.
Right, we have not got loads of time left. So what we'd like to do is ask you, well, we've already kind of know how you got your break in the media from going through journalism and then going to Football Daily. You've spoken to us through that, which is fantastic. Do you, when moving into this industry, and that can be then, this can be still now, did you have a hero, someone you sort of looked up to, someone you thought, that's what I want to be like?
Yeah, I mean, he's a current broadcaster, but I do think Mark Chapman's absolutely amazing. The fact that he can cover so many sports so impressively and effortlessly, and his knowledge about every single sport just feels absolutely insane. So I think he's a really competent broadcaster. And yeah, I'm delighted that he's got the Match of the Day gig along with Kelly Cates and Gabby Logan. That is a really safe pair of, 6 hands to give it to. So yeah, I think he's probably always been my sort of broadcasting hero, as it were. And then at Sky, I think there's some excellent pundits as well. I think Jamie Carragher is probably the outstanding pundit in the game right now. I do think he really sets the agenda in terms of he feels like he's 2-3 steps ahead of everyone at points. And I love Gary Neville at points as well. I feel like Gary Neville, if there's something political or financial breaking in the game, like when the European Super League got announced in, 2021, Gary Neville was on absolute flames for like an entire week. And yeah, he's brilliant at something political. But I think if you want someone to really get into the nuts and bolts of what's going wrong with the team or why a team or player is particularly performing well, I think Jamie Carragher is the top of the range.
Have you ever? So you said Mark Chapman was your hero, but I mean, like throughout, have you ever had like a pinch me moment almost when you've met someone or had the opportunity to do something in your career so far?
Yeah, there was definitely a moment. It was in 2019. So I'd only been at Football Daily for a year and a bit, or coming up to 2 years actually. And myself and Chris Hamill, who now works for The Athletic, we got the opportunity to go to the Heineken Champions League Trophy Tour. So basically they take the Champions League around different parts of the world outside of Europe to promote it. Not like it really needs it, but anyway, that's what they do. And we went to Bali for a week, and I was in goal trying to save a penalty against Carlos Puyol, and I was like, what has happened here? How the hell have I ended up here? The ball hit the post, cannoned back, and hit me in the nose and went in. That was quite a humbling experience, but it was a good pen from Puyol. He can still strike a ball. And then on the same trip, we also interviewed, I was doing the camera work, but Chris interviewed Alessandro Del Piero on a beach in Bali. And I was just like, well, how has this happened? So that was probably the biggest pinch me moment I've had.
I mean, that's pretty amazing, I have to say.
Would you say that has been your like almost favorite experience working in the sports media? Is those pinch me moments, or is there something? Is there another like big moment for you which you thought this is the best thing I've done?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like I've just been enormously lucky with so much of the stuff that has happened. I don't know. There's So last year on Sky Sports News, I did the breakdown of what the permutations of the Champions League draw meant, and I did it with Hayley McQueen. And look, I've had a passion about football and broadcasting for a long time. I've really tried to get better, can still get so much better. But I was a bit like, it is a bit random that there's nothing particularly special about me. Like I love football and I love talking about football and I'm quite sociable. But I was like, why am I telling the nation about the permutations of why, I don't know, I can't even remember who it was now, Arsenal are playing Bayern Munich and what it means for Arsenal. And, you know, Sky Sports News is still a massive platform. It's the only rolling 24-hour sports news channel in, I don't know whether it's in the world, but it's definitely in the UK. And yeah, I feel enormously privileged to work on there and do some great stuff with the entire team. And yeah, I just feel very, very lucky to be given that opportunity.
Go on, you go, Matt.
Sorry, I was going to just completely ending off for me. Is we'd like to know the best advice you've been given.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, the best advice you've been given. I think, and I actually heard this the other day, and it's not strictly linked to sport, but I think it is useful for anyone to get into it, is things are only embarrassing if you find it embarrassing. So that goes for any human interaction you've ever had. If you walk away and think, oh God, I've really embarrassed myself there, you haven't unless you find it embarrassing. And that is crucial to getting a start in the industry, because so many people debate so long about, oh, I'm not going to create my own match reports. I'm not going to start a podcast. I'm not going to make TikToks because it's embarrassing. And what will people think? Ultimately, it doesn't matter what people think. You know, you've got to have the confidence to put yourself out there. And yeah, some people might not like it. Some people might think it's lame. Who gives a crap whether they think it's lame? Like, if you're happy doing it and you can feel yourself getting better and you're enjoying making it, honestly, there'll be more people that enjoy it, listening to it or watching it, than the few haters. And it's easy in social media and 2025 to focus on the negativity, but generally they are a very small proportion. It just feels louder because it obviously hurts more than the sort of the build-up or the self-worth you get from compliments. So same with you guys starting the podcast, same with any content creator, emerging content creator. Try not to, and I know it's really easy to say and difficult to do, but try not to care about what people think, because ultimately you should only really care about people that are trying to help you out, or that are doing the same thing that you want to do, or that are on the same journey and path as you, and help them out, help you out, and just ignore the people that are sitting at home on their computer wishing that they were doing the same thing.
That's brilliant. That's great advice. And I think that rounds us off very nicely to the end of the podcast. So Sam, thank you ever so much for joining us again. It's been lovely to see you, and we'll have to do this again soon. Dougie, thank you very much for taking the time to come and speak with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and you've given us some brilliant advice and some lovely stories as well.
Oh, thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, good luck with everything with the podcast. And yeah, hopefully see you around soon.
Hopefully speak to you soon. Thank you very much, Tura.